What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video. Today I'm bringing you a 2-round NFL mock draft. We're on the Draft Network and I'm fired up to bring this video your way. If you're excited for it, hit that like button. It would mean the world to me. And if you like football content, draft content, I'm about to pump up this off-season content a lot. Please consider hitting that subscribe button. That would help me out a ton. And comment down below who your favorite team is, why you think they should go in a certain direction, what player you want them to take. And also tell me what picks I was right on and which ones I was wrong on. Also, since I'm going through 64 picks in this video, I might not talk as long on each and every team's picks. So if you're questioning why I made a certain selection and I don't get to talk about it as much as I normally would in a 1-round mock, comment down below and ask me. I'd be happy to have that conversation with you and we can go back and forth and talk about maybe what the best direction for your favorite team is. But without further ado, let's jump into it. No need to talk about pick number 1. I say this every mock draft. It's going to be Trevor Lawrence. So moving on to the second pick, I'm doing no trades. Maybe this is a spot where the Jets should consider a trade down, but I also really think they should consider and take Zach Wilson. He's my QB too. Really good QB classes overall though, so really can't go wrong with a lot of these guys if you put them in the right system and coach them up. Moving on to the Dolphins at 3, I am going to do something a little different. This is a spot I'd love to have them trade down, whether it's with Carolina at 8, maybe Denver at 9, because ultimately I think there's a wide receiver that fits what they want better than someone like Jamar Chase. They already have Will Fuller, who's a field-stretching outside option, though I think he is improving as a wide receiver, becoming more than just that downfield option. And they have Devontae Parker, who's a jump ball wide receiver, doesn't create a whole lot of separation. So really, when I look at this team, Devonta Smith makes the most sense. He can play inside, he can play outside. They do need a slot option, though they are going to get Albert Wilson back after opting out this past year. So with this pick, instead of taking Devonta Smith at 3, which I think would be a bit of a reach, I'm going to give him Penei Sewell. We're going to do a little something different here on this 2-round video. Let me know what you think the Dolphins should do at 3. I mean, Penei Sewell is at the minimum a Pro Bowl level guard. I think if it doesn't work out at tackle, you kick him inside and you'll have a ton of success. He'll be a mauler. But I also think for Miami, you can play him at right tackle, move Robert Hunt back inside to right guard, and boom, there's your offensive line of the future, and you get a blindside protector for Tua. Moving on to the Falcons at pick number 4. So this is one you have to talk about a little bit. The Falcons have restructured Matt Ryan's contract, lightens the cap hit this year, and I know why people are seeing that as a reason they have to stick with Ryan, or they plan to stick with Ryan this year, next year, because a lot of that cap hit and that dead money goes to next season. But then there's 2 more years after that, and with the emergence of void years, I think next offseason Atlanta ends up restructuring the deal again, or maybe if Ryan plays well this year, he gets traded, and the team that inherits him, kind of like what the Rams did with Matt Stafford, they restructure that deal. So I don't see the restructuring as a sign that Atlanta is in on Matt Ryan for the future. He's 36 years old. If Drew Brees can barely make it past 40, 41 years old playing, I don't think Matt Ryan can make it there. He's a good player. He's had a good career. I think he's got a couple seasons left in him, but I think it'd be foolish for Atlanta to go somewhere other than quarterback here. And ultimately, Trey Lance is somebody who I think would really benefit from a year learning the game, adjusting the speed at the NFL level. Obviously, the big jump from FCS to the NFL level. He doesn't need a year to sit. Carson Wentz was a really good player off the jump, but I think Lance is, especially considering he's 20 years old, you have that flexibility to have him sit behind Ryan for a year. Next offseason, maybe you trade Ryan if he plays really well for you this year and his stock goes up. Then you get a couple of assets for next year's draft or a player, whatever the case may be. And then Lance takes over the helm. Also, they had to restructure Matt Ryan's deal to be below the cap. So that contract restructuring was necessary, honestly, for Atlanta. So I like them taking Lance there. I think it makes a ton of sense. Moving on to Cincinnati, and I'm starting to see this mocked a lot more. I did it in maybe my 2nd or 3rd mock draft on the channel, and I thought it was just kind of a fun thought experiment, but Kyle Pitts to Cincinnati gives them a wide receiver option who can play on the outside, but they also need a tight end and someone who can do a lot over the middle of the field with Tyler Boyd, and Kyle Pitts can fill both those shoes. So kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I really like the fit there. This could be a Jamar Chase spot. I wouldn't doubt it. It could also be Rashawn Slater. I think that's a fine pick, and he has so much position versatility. You can play him wherever. They said they're going to play Riley Reif at right tackle. And if you have Slater taken at 5, he could play left. Jonah Williams could play left. One of the two of them could play guard. I've talked about this plenty on the channel. But I like the idea of getting Joe Burrow a big versatile weapon. And a player like Kyle Pitts is hard to come by. And I mean, he's a mismatch nightmare. So, like that fit. And then speaking of Jamar Chase, he's exactly what Philadelphia needs. He is a mistake eraser of sorts. He high points the football. Fantastic, good size, only 20 years old, a lot of upside. He's already my wide receiver 1. I think he's going to continue to get better at the NFL level. Plus, that allows you to move Jalen Reagor inside, maybe use him as a deep threat option as well next season. You have 2 competent wideouts. I could see tight end here if Kyle Pitts falls to 6. I could see that for Philadelphia. But nonetheless, I think Jamar Chase helps out Jalen Hurts next season, and that way you can get a true test, get a good look, and see if he's your franchise guy moving forward. On to the Detroit Lions, and I really wanted to go Jalen Waddle here. And Waddle is probably my wide receiver too, and he's a great separator, don't get me wrong. But with the signings of Rashad Perriman and Tyrell Williams, you already have Quintez Cephas. Those are all outside guys. This team needs somebody to play on the inside, so I think this is where I'm going to have Devonta Smith. And that's not to say Jalen Waddle couldn't be an inside wide receiver. Anything, Jalen Waddle makes it really easy for Jared Goff if the Lions were to take him. Throw the ball short, get him in open space, let him do everything after the catch. He's electric with the football in his hands. Devonta Smith just gives you a ton of versatility. It looks like the Lions are prioritizing separators. And I mean, you look at Brad Holmes and his hand in the mix in LA with the Rams. Robert Woods is a really good route runner. Cooper Kupp, one of the best slot wide receivers in the league, and his best skill set. He's not fast, but he's quick, and he knows how to get open. So I can see that carrying over into Detroit. They're prioritizing some of these guys who know how to get open, create separation. I think Devonta Smith fits that build and gives them what they're looking for moving forward. Moving on to the Carolina Panthers at pick number 8, and I'm going to surprise a few people here, but I'm going to give them Rashawn Slater. It feels like they're all in on Deshaun Watson, and if it's not Watson, it's Teddy Bridgewater. I'm not entirely sure Matt Rule wants to get a young QB, which I can understand. You don't want to have to deal with the growing pains, and with players like Justin Fields, there's going to be a curve, and there's going to be a lot of teaching to be done there. Not that they couldn't. I think they're a tandem that really could coach up Justin Fields and have him become an elite level quarterback. And offensive tackle's a sneaky big need for this team. They're relying on players like Cam Irving and Pat Elflein, and I'm not sold on either one of those two. So I think Rashawn Slater could be your left tackle of the future, or maybe even right tackle if Greg Little plays really well this upcoming season. Maybe he's in at guard. Also, I think Carolina might have the best chance to go out and get Deshaun Watson. I don't know if Miami's actually going to pull the trigger and make the move. And Deshaun Watson, if he's traded, of course, there's a lot of allegations going around, sexual harassment, sexual assault, so we have to wait and see if he's even playing football. Like, that sounds crazy, but with 14 allegations against him now, I mean, it's getting murky, and it's getting scary for his prospects of playing next season or just football in general. So, and it feels like if they don't get Deshaun Watson, Carolina's ready to roll with Teddy Bridgewater, which is not the end of the world. And why not give him a franchise Pro Bowl caliber offensive lineman wherever you want to play Rashawn Slater. Moving on to the Denver Broncos, I had been going cornerback with this pick, but you get Kendall Fuller on a 1-year deal, just a 1-year contract, but he fixed with Vic Fangio, and I wouldn't be surprised next offseason if the two come to a longer agreement, maybe 2-3-year deal next offseason. You also signed Ronald Darby. You already have Bryce Callahan, Michael Ojemudia. And I really like the fit with Micah Parsons, somebody who's a great run gap shooter, super athletic, needs to improve across a few different areas. He can also be a good situational pass rusher, filling in for when Von Miller or Bradley Chubb need to catch their breath. So I think Micah Parsons is a great fit for Vic Fangio. I think he's the exact linebacker that Fangio covets and wants in his defense. So it feels like a match made in heaven there. Moving on to the Cowboys at 10, I won't talk about this one a whole lot. This team needs a cornerback, an elite number 1 corner. Then you can move Trevon Diggs to be the CB2. They bring back Jordan Lewis. I guess you would make him the nickel corner. I'm not really a big Jordan Lewis guy, but if he's your nickel corner, okay. Diggs is the 2. Patrick Surtain is as technically sound as it gets. You play him against opposing teams' number 1 wide receivers, and you have a shutdown corner on the outside, and it helps that defense exponentially. On to the New York Football Giants at 11, and this is a spot, too, where Justin Fields would make a ton of sense. But I think Dave Gettleman is too hard-headed. both in a good way and a bad way. I think he has headstrong and is determined to prove that Daniel Jones is the guy. So because of that, they go Jalen Waddle. Look, Sterling Shepard only has one more year on his contract. I do think with Golden Tate gone, you play Shepard in the slot. That's where he's his most effective. But Darius Slayton's a good downfield, big play guy. But if you have the chance to have Kenny Golladay, Jalen Waddle, and then Slayton and Shepard as your 3 and 4, whatever their future might hold, that is a nasty 1-2 tandem at the top of the wide receiver depth chart in Waddle and Golladay. And they're two perfectly contrasted players. Golladay does a lot of things well. He's just not a great separator. Waddle does know how to get open. He is so quick and so fast. He opens up the field, take the top off of opposing defenses, but he also get him the ball in space. Same thing I said that the Lions could see with Waddle. Same could be said with the Giants and Daniel Jones. Give him the ball in space, off a bubble screen, whatever the case may be. Get creative. Jason Garrett, this would be your spot. Find ways to get Jalen Waddle the football and let him do the rest. On to the San Francisco 49ers, and this could definitely be cornerback, but if Justin Fields falls to your lap at 12, you got to take him. This is a match made in heaven. I think he'd be a fantastic fit for Kyle Shanahan, and it'd also be a team where he wouldn't have to do but so much. It's a team that wants to run the ball first, and when they go play action off of that, Kyle Shanahan draws people open maybe better than anybody in the NFL. That's open for discussion, but nonetheless, one of the best offensive minds. They have a great defense. You can even have Fields sit for a full season. It also just feels like Jimmy G to the Pats feels inevitable, right? So maybe by taking Fields here, that allows San Francisco to go ahead and cut Jimmy G or trade him to whoever may want him. So maybe they're waiting until after the draft to make sure, okay, we have a QB that's better than Jimmy G or someone we would rather roll out with than Jimmy Garoppolo. So in this situation, I do believe corner is a need, but Justin Fields just makes too much sense. If he falls to your lap, you got to take him. Moving on to the LA Chargers with pick number 13. I got him taking Christian Darrisaw. You get your franchise left tackle the year after taking your franchise QB. That just makes sense. You got to keep Herbert upright. You sign Corey Linsley. You draft Darrisaw. You're making steps in the right direction. On to the Vikings at 14, and I'd love to give him Kwity Paye here. Kwity Paye feels like a Vikings edge rusher. He size and weight-wise feels a lot like Danielle Hunter. They play a little different, but this is a team that coaches up defensive end really well. I mean, think back to Jared Allen, think back to Everson Griffin and Danielle Hunter, who we just mentioned. They were all coached up by this organization. That feels like the spot they know how to develop the best. So they're still looking for answers across the offensive line. They took Garrett Bradbury a couple years back, but before Bradbury, they haven't gone offensive line in the first round since 2012 when they took, sorry, just had to go look it up. Matt Khalil, his name escaped me, but that and then Garrett Bradbury. Good length of time between the two, and Elijah Vera Tucker gives you a ton of versatility. They let Riley Reif walk. He was better than expected at left tackle. Maybe Ezra Cleveland bumps from guard to play tackle. That's what he was drafted out of Boise State as. Or you keep Elijah Vera Tucker at that tackle spot. That's what he played this past season at USC. But whatever they want to do, Vera Tucker gives you options. And it feels like too big of a need since Reif is gone to not address it here. Plus, I could see this team going edge in rounds 2, 3, maybe even 4, and coaching a player up. Also, since you got Dalvin Tomlinson in free agency, Michael Pierce is back. Danielle Hunter, I don't think they'd trade him. He'll be back and on the field. You're already getting a better defensive line compared to where it was last year. On to the Patriots at 15, and I'm going to mock Mac Jones here. I know I just said it feels like they're inevitable to get Jimmy G, but until it happens, I'm going to go ahead and give him Mac Jones. Mac Jones and Jimmy G feel like side grades from one another. Mac Jones is just cheaper. So until it happens, I think Mac Jones fits what Bill Belichick wants out of that offense. And a part of me really wants to see him under center with an awesome tight end duo in Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry, Damian Harris in the backfield, a Burner and Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers, whoever they want to throw on the other side. That feels like an offense that in ways reminds me of what he had at Alabama. Not nearly as good of playmakers on the outside, don't get me wrong, but good offensive line, a good defense on the other side of the ball, power running game, and a couple of good tight ends make up for what you might not have on the outside, the wide receiver spot. So it feels like a really good fit, and it makes a ton of sense. So I know I said Jimmy G to the Pats, but let me know what you think the Pats will do and who will be under center next season. You know, it might even be Cam Newton. Maybe I'm just discrediting Newton in a full offseason. Maybe he'll bounce back and have a good year next year. On to the Cardinals at 16. You cannot let this guy fall down the board anymore. Caleb Farley is falling, and there's been rumors to say maybe 16's as high as he goes, which is mind-boggling. A cornerback of his size and frame, they don't fall far. All right, he opted out last year, and I get there might be some concerns about maybe he didn't get better because he opted out, and maybe his tape isn't as refined as some others in the class, and also J.C. Horn's rising up boards, and I get that. There's a lot to like about a lot of these corners. Players like Greg Newsome's also on his way up on draft boards. Tyson Campbell, Eric Stokes' stock's going up as well. So I still like Farley. He's my CB2 for right now. Maybe I'll have to reevaluate when it comes to tape, but I like Farley. I think he's a good fit for Arizona. On to the Raiders. Here's a new pick for me. This could also be J.C. Horn. This could be a player like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who I've had them take in the past couple of videos. But there's a big hole at right tackle, and Tevin Jenkins. If the Raiders take him, I would love to see Tevin Jenkins just plowing through, making big holes for Josh Jacobs and even Kenya Drake, who they signed this free agency period. So it feels like Tevin Jenkins fills a need and has that mean mentality. Feels like a future Raider in a lot of ways. Moving on to the Dolphins, back on the clock here at 18, and no Devonta Smith. I had been making some mock drafts. That sounds a little silly, but, kind of going through this a couple times before I actually recorded, and I had Devonta Smith falling here to 18, but after thinking about it, I just don't know if he's going to fall that far. He's too good of a player. Someone is going to make that move. So, with edge now being a need, they no longer have Kyle Van Noy. Azeez Ojulari, when it comes to tape, him and Jalen Phillips are probably edge 1 and 2. Phillips, I think, is a little bit better in a 4-3, but he does have that versatility. But Azeez Ojulari, 3-4 outside linebacker, and also drop back into cover. Just feels like a perfect scheme fit for him. On to the Washington football team here at 19. This is where I'm going to have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Initially, I wasn't super crazy about it, but if you saw it on your screen, some of their biggest needs, according to Draft Network, linebacker and safety, and I think Joke is a combination of both. In a lot of ways, I could see him, like the Broncos, they play their strong safety in and around the line of scrimmage, in the box frequently. Maybe Owusu-Koramoah can be that near the line of scrimmage safety / linebacker for him. And I think here, he's an off-ball linebacker. He might even be the middle linebacker. Him and Cole Holcomb, two super speedy, rangy guys. I'd love to have Washington just solidify that linebacking core. And then you look at that defense, already in an insanely good front four. You get Joke, you have Holcomb. John Bostic's not a bad player in my eyes. That's your linebacking core. And then you sign William Jackson to that secondary. Cameron Curl was a great pick last year. And then the secondary, you're even looking at that as, plus level in the NFL standards. So that defense, if they take Owusu-Koramoah, is going to be cracked. There's still some things they need to address on the offensive side, but 2-round mock will come back to the Washington football team. On to the Bears at 20. Biggest need here is going to be offensive tackle. There's no QBs available, so you reach down the board and you go ahead and take Sam Cosmi. That allows you to move on from Charles Leno Jr. or Bobby Massey. I think Cosmi better fits at left tackle. I think he could do both, but I see him as a left tackle in the NFL, so go ahead and cut Charles Leno. Maybe you get anything for him. Maybe you get a 7th-round pick from some tackle-needy team. Who knows? But this allows you to get a big-time upgrade, but also clear some cap space. On to the Colts at 21. This is another team that needs to go tackle. As I'm recording this, we're a few hours removed from them re-signing T.Y. Hilton, but I'm going to stick with edge here. Kwity Paye feels like a good fit in that 4-3 defense. Justin Houston at the time is still a free agent, and even if he comes back, edge is a big need. Justin Houston is not what he once was, 5 years ago. So Kwity Paye is a freak athlete, and he's somebody who is still getting better. Like, you look at the edge class, right? So Kwity Paye didn't start playing defensive end till later in high school. Gregory Rousseau went to Miami originally as a wide receiver. Jason Owe didn't pick up playing football until I think it was in college, maybe late high school as well. But there's so many raw players. Then you have Jalen Phillips, who tape-wise, and like I said, him and Azeez Ojulari, they're already day one players. But a lot of these edge rushers are really raw, and you understand why. But the upside is there. Kwity Paye's a freak athlete, so I'd love to see what Matt Eberflus could do with him, and in a really good defense already. Kwity Paye can make it that much better. On to the Tennessee Titans at 22. Yeah, this one's got to be J.C. Horn. They're working on that defense. You sign Bud Dupree, you get Jayon Brown back, you bring Danico Autry in as well. but you move on from a Dory Jackson, who talent-wise I think is a really good player, but inconsistent when it comes to being on the field, but also just his play on field also had some ups and downs with it. So they could definitely use a cornerback one. Love J.C. Horn. Has the size, has the physicality. Little grabby, but Mike Vrabel will be able to coach him up. I feel confident with that. There's also a team that could certainly go wide receiver in this spot. On to the New York Jets at 23. I'm going to stay with the cornerback group. Greg Newsome's climbing up boards, and there's a lot to like. Good frame, 6'1", 190, and the tape is there with this past year with Northwestern. He also just fits with that cover 3 defense. I think that's what you're going to see a lot of in New York with Robert Saleh taking over in that helm as the head coach for the Jets. And cornerback's definitely a position they need to get better at. So I think you're going to end up seeing a lot more corners than we expected. Like if you asked me a couple weeks ago, I probably would have told you 4, the big 3 being, Surtain, Farley, and J.C. Horn, and I would have told you all of them gone in the top 16. And then one other guy, maybe there's a second one who sneaks in, but now I'm feeling really confident with probably 5, maybe even 6 cornerbacks going in the first round, which sounds crazy, but I could definitely see it. Speaking of corners, this is a corner-needy team now that they cut Steven Elsey, the Pittsburgh Steelers. But here, I am going to stick with Jalen Mayfield as the pick. Future left tackle, the future. He's a mean run blocker. Love that fit for the Steelers. I think he's really compatible with what they want to do moving forward. Next up is the Jacksonville Jaguars at 25. And they signed Rashaan Melvin in free agency, but Javon Moehrig is too good of a value here, and Melvin could maybe in a year or two be somebody who ends up being cut by that team. I don't know. I think they overpaid him for sure. I think that's a consensus across a lot of different people. I think a lot of people will tell you they overspent for Melvin, but Moehrig can play free. He can play strong. If Melvin's playing free, then I'm totally comfortable with Moehrig playing strong, but I think they'll find a lot of different ways to put him in a lot of different situations, get the most out of his skill set. And if you're looking at just like best players in the draft, he's better than the 25th player in the draft, in my opinion. So probably in that top 15 neighborhood. So good value there for the Jags. And they have a bunch of needs still across the board. Spent a lot of money in free agency, but there's still plenty of needs to address. So go BPA in that spot. Next up, the Cleveland Browns. You could go Jalen Phillips here, and I wouldn't hate it. Actually, you know what? I think I'm going to go ahead and give him Phillips in this spot. Previously, I'd been going Zaven Collins, but I think I have a linebacker going to him in round 2. We'll get to that, obviously, in a little bit. But Jalen Phillips, day 1, he's ready to play. If he can avoid injuries, him and Myles Garrett are going to cause teams headaches. I mean, that pass rush is going to be elite. Moving on to the Ravens at 27, and I'd love to give them someone like Jalen Phillips if he's available, or maybe this is a Zaven Collins rotational linebacker spot, but with Rashad Bateman on the board, you gotta go with Bateman here. They swung on and missed for Kenny Galladay this offseason. They missed on Juju Smith-Schuster. They offered him $13 million, and he liked to go back to Pittsburgh, kind of wild. But they need that bigger body, guy who can make those tough catches, get open, find soft spots, and in 3rd down and 8, somebody that Lamar Jackson can look at and say, need you to make this catch. Also, Bateman has that wider catch radius, so, the knock on Lamar Jackson, I'm not necessarily saying this, but he's not, at the same time, the most accurate QB in the league, but people knock his accuracy, and sometimes his throws can be erratic. Bateman has that bigger catch radius, so I feel like those two, the skill set of Bateman counteract some of Jackson's weaknesses. So sick voice crack there from me. On to the Saints at 28. And these next 2 picks, I'm going to probably go back-to-back corner. And you tell me in the comments below which one you like more. Let's say Saints go Tyson Campbell, Packers go Eric Stokes. I think both these guys have legit shots to sneak in the back end of round 1. And I think there's a lot to like about both of them. I've seen a lot of different places, heard, scouts and experts on the NFL draft have these two, in different spots. Some people see Stokes as a top 5 corner. Some see that from Campbell. So I think they both have their stock rising. They have good size, good speed, things you would like to see improved upon on the tape, but they both go to good coaching staffs here. So I don't necessarily think 2 back-to-back Georgia corners are going to go, but these are 2 teams that could use a corner. I know the Packers brought back Kevin King, but, you definitely can get better there. So Campbell then Stokes, tell me which one you think is better in the comments below. On to the Buffalo Bills with pick number 30. I'm going to stick with what I gave him. I'm pretty sure I gave him this player in my last mock, but Gregory Rousseau. You have AJ Epineza, who didn't do a whole lot last year. Actually, I think he might have opted out. But he's coming back, and hopefully you get more out of him in, what would be year 2. Him and Gregory Rousseau, both kind of project players, but man, if they could just both find their stride, not even fully hit their potential, but because both their potentials are sky high. If they can get most of the way there, that's a really good pass rush tandem moving forward. Plus, you have Ed Oliver in the middle. Don't forget about him. So it's a position that they're old at right now, Buffalo that is, and they need to get younger at. And I think Rousseau, if he becomes what he can be, we'll look back and say, wow, how did this player fall to 30th? Be the 30th pick in the draft. That's astronomical. That's mind-boggling. So, you don't always see somebody that could be that good this late in the first round. So, I think the Bills will pull the trigger. Kansas City Chiefs on the clock at pick number 31. I'm going to give them Terrence Marshall Jr. They're eyeing wide receiver. Maybe there's a reunion with Sammy Watkins, Demarcus Robinson in the near future. They do need tackle. This could certainly be a spot where they go Liam Eichenberg. I think that's what Mel Kiper Jr. just had in his latest mock that came out a couple days ago, as of the time I'm recording this. But I think Terrence Marshall just makes a ton of sense here. Get a good wide receiver. He's a good complement to a player like Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. So I think it makes a ton of sense for a lot of different reasons. And plus, round 2, maybe that's when you can get a developmental tackle. I think they're going to roll with Lucas Niang, though, at left tackle, and then Kyle Long at right tackle. Then the interior looks as Joe Thuney, maybe Laurent Duvernay-Tardif is playing center, maybe. And then Mike Remmers at right guard. That's a pretty solid group if that's how it plays out. So don't feel the need to go there round 1. And then on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with pick number 32. This could certainly be Christian Barmore, but they re-signed Ndamukong Suh. And I'm not saying you don't want to think about that position in the future, but man, JPP is a free agent, and I would love to see this guy in that system, learning from the likes of Jason Pierre-Paul, who's put together a great career, as well as Shaq Barrett, who's put together an awesome stretch, a little bit of a late bloomer, but one of those guys who coming out of the draft was like, he has the athletic ability. He could be a huge upside player, and now he's hitting that stride. Jason Owe is a freak athlete. The QB pressures are there, but the sacks aren't. Had no sacks last season for Penn State, but in this spot, there's no rush to get him on the field. As of right now, Leonard Fournette has not re-signed, but Tampa Bay is bringing back 21 of their 22 starters from the Super Bowl. They've already got the gang back together. They're good to go. So you have Owe sit, refine as a pass rusher, get better, learn from the likes of Barrett and JPP, and then when Pierre-Paul's not under contract next offseason, you put yourself in a position, if you're Jason Owe, to become a starter, and then you have a freak athlete opposite of Shaq Barrett, and then the Bucs don't miss a stride. Really like that fit. Now we're on to round 2, and I'll go through these a little quicker. This is where I have Christian Barmore going. Barmore's a first-round talent. He's not going to go into the second round, and I acknowledge that here. So I don't know where. Maybe the Saints take him. I could see that. The Packers at 29. Maybe the Jags here at 25. That could certainly make a ton of sense. Jets at 23. Have him with Quinnen Williams. I think that'd be a really fun pairing. But I just didn't see a fit that I liked more, but I don't think the Jags let him get by past 33. Moving on to the Jets at 34. This is a tough one. They could go a number of different directions. Wide receiver could be in play. Keelan Cole is only on a 1-year deal. I think Jamison Crowder might end up being cut or traded this offseason. So maybe someone like Kadarius Toney, Elijah Moore, one of these slot specialists, Amari Rodgers too, could be in play here as a future slot wide receiver. I'm going to go edge here. Ronnie Perkins, I think, is a better fit in a 4-3. Osai definitely could be in play here, 3-4, but I think he's got so much versatility outside and inside linebacker that ultimately what Robert Sala's going to look for is just a guy to strictly rush the passer. And Joe Tryon has the production, has the numbers to back up, just not the athletic upside to make him a first-round guy. And this might be a little early for Tryon. I'm not 100% sold on that pick, but edge is a need. Plus, I think Tryon's just plug and play, ready to go day one type of NFL player and edge rusher. So on to the Atlanta Falcons here at 35, and they signed Mike Davis to a 2-year contract, but man, Davis does not have that big playability. He knows how to make people miss in the open field, but he's more of that bowling ball type of running back. So here, you get the lightning to Davis's thunder, Travis Etienne. I don't see him at running back 1. I have him at running back 3, actually, behind these two guys, Najee Harris, then Javonte Williams. But speaking of Najee Harris, he's going to be the pick here for the Miami Dolphins. I think the Dolphins might end up going running back by committee. So maybe this is wide receiver. Kadarius Toney certainly makes a ton of sense here. But nonetheless, ETN gives the Falcons a home run threat, and then Najee Harris is a freak. I mean, that dude is unbelievable. So both teams could use a running back of the future, and I just ultimately think those two fit what that offense is trying to do moving forward a little bit better than the opposite. But I think it would work either way. They're both really good. On to the Eagles at 37. I'm giving them the linebacker of the future. They're really weak in that group. Nick Bolton, sideline to sideline, big thumper, does a lot of things right. Next up, the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm going IOL here. A player like Landon Dickerson. He can play guard. He can play center. I know they have Trey Hopkins under center under contract through 2022. He also has experience playing guard and center. So overall, again, there's a lot of versatility across that offensive line. I like the addition here. IOL after you go Kyle Pitts in round 1. You're building that foundation around Joe Burrow. Then we get to the Carolina Panthers, and this could be Aaron Robinson. But I think they need an outside corner, and Kelvin Joseph is somebody whose stock is, again, a lot like these other corners. 6'1", 191. The stock is rising, no doubt about it. And I like the fit there with Kelvin Joseph in Carolina. I mean, when Troy Pride Jr. right now is your number 1 corner, I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I don't know about him being CB1, so it's definitely a position you need to address. For the Denver Broncos, they need a right tackle. Liam Eichenberg, I think, eventually plays left tackle, but they need a right tackle as of right now. Also, it's just a position that eventually will become a need. So I think that's the pick there. Liam Eichenberg, better run blocker than pass blocker, so maybe it's a good fit there on the right side. But I eventually do see him becoming a left tackle in the NFL. For the Lions at 41, this could also be offensive line. Dylan Radunz makes a ton of sense, but Zaven Collins is not going to keep falling. Like, he's somebody who can do a lot of different things to that linebacker spot. They're looking to get better at edge rusher, somebody opposite of Romeo Quire. Zaven Collins can definitely do that. He's also an off-ball linebacker. He can do a lot of things right. And again, Zaven Collins is not a round 2 guy. Maybe he falls into that spot just because of how many good players are in this draft, but talent-wise, he's a round 1 type of player. We get to the Giants at 42, and I mentioned a versatile edge rusher, and I think Joseph Osai, I would love to see him play for the Giants. And, going back, before I even started this YouTube channel, I was like, Joseph Osai at 11 for the Giants. I'd love to see that. He's now fallen into more second-round consideration, which is crazy to me because he's a really good player, has experience both rushing the passer off the edge, but also stand-up inside linebacker. Just a really versatile player and a really good player at that. Got a lot of playing time at Texas, so he's a little bit older than some players that'll go in the first round. Maybe that's what holds him back, but I'd love to see the Giants take Osai there. Now with the 49ers on the clock at pick number 43, this could be Aaron Robinson, though. Jason Verrett's back under contract, and ultimately, interior offensive line makes a lot of sense. They could use a guard, and then Alex Mack's only under contract for 1 year, so maybe this is Creed Humphrey, but Wyatt Davis, to my mind, is the best interior offensive lineman on the board. So, you go QB in round 1, you go IOL in round 2, still need to address corner, but all in all, that front 4 is good enough to hide some weaknesses in the secondary. So I think you address offense this draft, try to get back to the Super Bowl, that Super Bowl contention category that you were in a couple years ago. And really you were in until all the injuries bogged you down last year. For the Dallas Cowboys at 44, this feels like a perfect fit. Levi Onwuzurike, they need an interior pass rusher. Onwuzurike is certainly that, so won't talk about it for too long. Next up, the Jacksonville Jaguars with another pick in the second round. They could definitely be buyers for Zach Ertz, but I'm going to go ahead and go Pat Freiermuth, which before the year, he was tight end 1 and there was no contest, and then Kyle Pitts emerged and said, hold my beer. So Freiermuth is still a really good player, and it's a program that produces good tight ends. I mean, look at Mike Gesicki and how good of a player he's become, which I'm already a big Mike Gesicki fan, so Freiermuth, I think the world of him as well. Next up is the New England Patriots, and I could definitely see them going wide receiver. Kadarius Toney makes a ton of sense. But you bring in Kendrick Bourne, you bring in Nelson Aguilar, you already have Jacoby Myers. I don't know. And honestly, this just feels like such a fun talking point. What if they drafted Asante Samuel Jr.? Right, obviously his dad was a stud, one of the best cornerbacks in Patriots history. And what if they just drafted his son? I mean, I think he fits what the Pats are wanting to do. Plus, Stephon Gilmore, last year of his deal, they had the second round tender on J.C. Jackson, and I've heard a lot of people say it, and I think I have to agree. I think the Pats want a team to make an offer for J.C. Jackson and then get that extra second round pick because of it. So if that's the case, they might be down J.C. Jackson next or this upcoming season. So corner might be a need because of that alone. But moving forward, they're going to need a corner. And I mean, there's the familiarity. Asante Samuel Jr. to the Pats. Let me know what you think. Next up, we get the Chargers on the clock at pick 47. And I love the idea of Kadarius Toney here. An elite separator, makes a ton happen over the middle of the field. He's a downfield threat as well, and just gives you a speed element you don't have with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. Mike Williams also in the last year of his deal this upcoming season, so you get a little younger at that position, and he's just a really nice fit. And again, you're addressing the offense. You're putting pieces around Justin Herbert. You could go edge here, and I won't knock that, but all in all, I think Kadarius Toney's too good of a player to pass up here. Now we're to the Raiders at 48. I could definitely see Baron Browning being the pick here, but I'm actually going to go safety, and this is why I didn't go Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah earlier back in round 1. And Richie Grant makes sense. Definitely want to give him a shout out. Jamar Johnson's getting a ton of buzz as of late, but I'm a big fan of Javon Holland. Like, he opted out this past year, but go back and watch his 2019 tape at Oregon. Dude's a freak. And if Gus Bradley wants to run that cover 3 and Javon Holland's just roaming the middle of the field, he's going to make plays, and I think he's going to be fantastic for that defense. So, love that pick for the Raiders. So you go offensive tackle, then you go safety. You're addressing some of your bigger needs on both sides of the football. All in all, good 2 rounds to start the draft. This is how it were to play out. I would be really happy with the Raiders draft. Cardinals on the clock at 49. Really thought about Javonte Williams. Nice power complement to Chase Edmonds, and I won't knock it if they go this direction. Plus, you went corner in round 1. IOL could certainly be in play here. Creed Humphrey could be somebody they move over to guard. And overall, there's a couple other players you could play. Maybe Alex Leatherwood you could kick inside to play guard. But I am going to give him a nose tackle, Milton Williams. Not a sexy pick, but you have him. He eats up blocks, and he's great in the run game. You have him and J.J. Watt, stuff in the run game. Watt really does it both. Everybody thinks of him as a pass rusher, but he's pretty good against the run still. So Watt, Williams, stuff in the middle, and then Watt and Chandler Jones, as well as Marcus Golden rushing the passer. Next thing you know, that defense goes from, bottom feeders in the NFL to at least average, but in my eyes, right above it. Next up, we get to the Dolphins at pick number 50. I think this is a wide receiver spot, and I think Elijah Moore is the absolute perfect fit for where this team is at. Smaller frame, but he's a slot guy, and he's also a really good returner. So you play him on the inside. You don't have to rush him back. Like I said earlier, you have Albert Wilson next season after opting out. So if it plays out as Fuller and Devontae Parker on the outside, Parker's your X of sorts, that big body guy, knows how to make the tough catches. Fuller's your downfield, big playability guy, and then Moore, a little bit of everything, slot guy, makes plays over the middle of the field between the numbers. That's a really solid wide receiver core, and it just proves they don't have to go wide receiver in round 1, which is crazy, because they have, pick 3 and 18. They definitely could, but they don't have to. They can still get good players. Speaks to how good this wide receiver class is as well. On to the Washington football team. I promised you we would come back to tackle. Dylan Radunz, I think, could be that left tackle of the future. That's where he played at North Dakota State, and they obviously need a bookend left tackle. So there's a good fit there. Don't know if he starts day 1, but down the line, I think that's certainly an option. Then we get to the Chicago Bears at 52, and I'm going to have him take a QB here. And Trask, his stock is staying stagnant, maybe even going down. Kellen Mond is going up. But I think this is a Davis Mills spot, right? I think he only played 10 games in college. I think that was the number. So he was a top recruit coming out of high school, sneaky athletic, and he has the boxes checked. Like, if you were to look at him, you'd say, yeah, like, that's a guy who can play in the NFL. The size, the arm, the accuracy. He checks a lot of those boxes. And I could see Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy saying, we like Dalton. He's okay if he starts, but, Davis Mills, this could be the guy of the future. And maybe he's not a second-round guy, but another one of those players who's generating a lot of buzz this time of year, and I think ultimately he will make his way into the second round. Moving on to the Tennessee Titans at pick 53, I really like Rondale Moore. And his pro day was actually the day of me recording this, and I checked in at 5'7" flat, which is remarkable. I wonder if the Draft Network has updated that. No. So, in college he was listed at 5'9", but pro day said 5'7". And now there's a lot of people saying, I think Jim Nagy tweeted it, maybe he's just a gadget running back. And if that's the case, I think there's a lot of ways the Titans could use him. Nice change of pace from Derrick Henry, obviously, but you lose Corey Davis, you need another playmaker, and Rondale Moore is just one of those guys. Get him the football, good things happen. Plus 42.5-inch vertical. Don't be worried about throwing him the football. If you get him out on routes, maybe he plays on the inside, you move on from Adam Humphries. I think there's a lot of different ways you can use Rondale Moore, and this is a team that obviously could use an inside guy. They did sign Josh Reynolds, but Moore, play him on the inside, use him as a change of pace running back sometimes. A lot of fun things I think Tennessee could use him for. Next up is the Colts at pick number 54, and I don't necessarily love their options here. Aaron Robinson could be a good nickel corner, but they have Kenny Moore, and I think he's okay. And plus, they run a lot of cover too. How bad do you really need that third corner when most of the time your main corners are playing in the flats? It's already a defense that doesn't prioritize, elite, man-to-man cover corners or something like that. So, and I mentioned earlier, they brought back T.Y. Hilton today. So you have him, you have Pittman, you have Paris Campbell. Do they stay healthy? I don't know. You could go Amari Rodgers here. I think I'm going to give him Alex Leatherwood. Look, he's an animal in the run game. And, I mean, you see it on the tape with Alabama. Like, big part of Najee Harris's success, whether you want to recognize it or not, is Alex Leatherwood. And if he plays left tackle this year, he is somebody I'd love to see paving the way for Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack and maybe even Nyheim Hines if they actually hand him the football. He's most of the time doing his work in the passing game. But even if it doesn't work out for Leatherwood at tackle, he could play guard. They have Quentin Nelson, who's a great left guard. But maybe down the line, Leatherwood, is a starter at right guard, or maybe even, right tackle. They move Braden Smith over. I don't know. I'm not Chris Ballard. It's not my question to answer, but they need a left tackle. Alex Leatherwood, I like his tape. They want to run the ball. It could be a good fit. Back to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this is where I have Javonte Williams. And maybe it's my bias. I don't know if Williams falls this far into the second round, but man, I'd be so happy if he did, man. You have no idea. That power running back, you throw him in the backfield. You went Jalen Mayfield in round 1. This is just an establishing draft class. Like, we're going to go back to pounding the rock. We're not going to average 3 point whatever yards per carry. We're going to be a dominant running team. We're going to get back to what carried us to the Super Bowls in the 80s. Also a couple of championships in the mid to early 2000s, so get back to that identity. When you think Pittsburgh, you think great defense, and you think good running backs. So you still have Big Ben, and they need to address QB. Maybe this is a Kellen Mond, maybe, or Kyle Trask. I mean, I'm not a big Kyle Trask guy, especially in round 2. Round 3 or 4, maybe I could ponder that, but man, if the Steelers went Mayfield, then Williams, I would be beyond happy. You have no idea. Moving on to the Seattle Seahawks. This is where I'm going to have Ronnie Perkins. This could be IOL. I could definitely see Creed Humphrey. They could get better than Ethan Posek, but they brought him back, and PFF grade, I'm pretty sure, had him at like 7, maybe with some other, offensive line grading system, but Posek in some people's eyes is a good player. I think you can get better at that spot, but LJ Collier hasn't worked out. We haven't seen Darrell Taylor. You gotta find an answer. Now, if they bring back Carlos Dunlap, I'd probably change my mind and go Creed Humphrey. They cut Dunlap. He's just sitting on the open market. I think a reunion is likely between the two. You just couldn't pay Dunlap $14 million. I get why Seattle had to cut him. But if he comes back, then I'm probably leaning back towards Creed Humphrey, or maybe if Leatherwood's available, maybe that's, a guy who could play tackle or guard for him down the line. But I like the idea of Perkins. I think he will be better at the NFL level than his stats showed at Oklahoma. I don't know if he was necessarily used the right way, but that's just kind of like the Big 12. You see that a lot of times. Defenders move on to the NFL and they get better because teams know how to use them more appropriately based on their skill set. So Perkins could definitely be a good second round steal for Seattle. And they got to make the most of these picks. Don't have a first rounder, so got to make the most of these mid and late round options. Transitioning to the LA Rams, this is where I had Creed Humphrey going. Pretty sure Austin Blythe is still a free agent. If I'm wrong, I apologize. Let me know in the comments. But pretty sure he's still a free agent as of now. Creed Humphrey can be a plug-and-play starter at center. Interior offensive line's already a need, so makes a ton of sense for a lot of different reasons. Now the Baltimore Ravens are back on the clock, and this team definitely could go edge. I think they got a good deal with Tyus Bowser. Pernell McPhee's whatever. I think they could definitely get better at that spot. Maybe it's someone like Rashad Jr. here, maybe Carlos Basham. I think he's more of a 4-3 player. This is going to sound crazy, but they already need a wide receiver to be on the outside, and I gave them Rashad Bateman. But Willie Snead's a free agent, and they need a slot guy. So I'm going to have them doing what Denver did last year. Go Jerry Jeudy, then KJ Hamler. I think Baltimore, since they did it in the offseason and free agency, I don't think it's impossible for them to go double up at wide receiver. You get Bateman as your prototypical X. Amari Rodgers is a great slot wide receiver. And then you have Marquise Hollywood Brown as your big play downfield threat. Not 100% sold that they would. Doesn't feel like a Baltimore thing to do, but that's a big area of need. And then if you go Bateman, then Rodgers, all of a sudden you have some really good options outside for Lamar Jackson. That brings the Cleveland Browns back on the clock. Jamin Davis, he's starting to get a ton of buzz. I know I've said that about a lot of different players, but he's climbing up boards. Good coverage, speedy linebacker. You play him at the weak side spot next to Anthony Walker, who they just signed to, I'm pretty sure, just a one-year deal. So boost up that linebacking core. You went edge round 1, linebacker round 2. You're really addressing some of these needs across the defensive side. And the offense is good, so address the defense and you're in serious Super Bowl contention. Pick number 60 sees the Saints back on the clock. And again, not loving a lot of these options. I'll give them Jabril Cox. They moved on from Quan Alexander. They're looking for a coverage linebacker. Really, they just need a future inside linebacker. So Jabril Cox, I think, certainly could be that. I really wanted them to take Patrick Queen last year, but he was off the board by the time they were on the clock. So Jabril Cox maybe could be that type of player for him. Obviously, both went to LSU, both played linebacker. So not a perfect comp, but there's some similarities. Pick number 61, we got the Buffalo Bills back on the clock. They could go corner. I like Levi Wallace. He's overcome a lot of different things, and I think he's a good enough boundary option. And then Teron Johnson proved to be a pretty good nickel option, and Aaron Robinson's a nickel corner. He will be off the board here in just a little bit, I promise. But they could go wide receiver also, someone who could replace Gabriel Davis on the outside, but a lot of these options I think will be available later. Sage Surratt, I like. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Dwayne Estridge is a good player. Nico Collins, Tutu Atwell. So I feel like the Bills can wait maybe till round 3 to address that spot. And instead, I'm going to go IDL, Tommy Tugai. Sorry if I said his name wrong, but eats up blocks, great in the run game. I know they went edge with Rousseau, and he's a guy who bounces between outside, and he has a lot of pass rush success on the inside. His 15.5 sacks 2 years ago with Miami, a lot of that came from the interior. And Tugai is just a first and second down guy, but he's a run stuffer. This team needs to get better in that area. So him and Ed Oliver on early downs, and then once you get to third and long passing situations, you take Tugai off the field. Rousseau maybe kicks inside to that interior part of the D-line, and he can create some havoc and be a good pass rusher there. Moving on to the Green Bay Packers. We're going wide receiver here. Don't worry, Packers fans. We're getting another weapon. MVS is under contract. I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure Alan Lazard is still out on the open market. Haven't heard anything about him. Tutu Atwell, maybe an option here. Dwayne Eskridge, Amon-Ra St. Brown, definitely in play. I'm going to go Tylan Wallace, though. I'm a fan of Tylan Wallace. He's got awesome downfield speed. Feels like a nice complement to Devontae Adams and MVS. In a lot of different ways, but I could certainly see one of these smaller guys, Atwell, Eskridge, in play here, but I just love the speed of Tylan Wallace, and I think Oklahoma State only used him on the right side of the field, but I feel like Matt LaFleur would be able to use him in a lot of different ways. I trust his offensive mind, so really like the fit there, and obviously it's a position of need for Green Bay, but they have a couple different options they could take there. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to give them Aaron Robinson. Really thought about Baron Browning here. They could use another linebacker, but I think you play Aaron Robinson in the slot. You move L'Jarius Sneed to the outside, and Sneed was awesome last year, so maybe Kansas City has some confidence and waits to go corner later on, but Aaron Robinson's also too good of a player, and I think he's off the board before pick 63, so I'm also trying to reconcile that wrong, try to correct it a little bit. Last pick, I went edge. This could 100%. I love Davion Nixon, but let's have some fun. Kellen Mond to close out the second round. Brady's under contract through 2022. It allows you, hold on, let me go to round 2. It allows you to sit Mond for 2 seasons, learn behind the most successful QB in the draft. The athleticism's there for Mond. I don't know. It's a fun thought experiment at the least. But hope you all enjoyed this 2-round mock draft. Comment your thoughts down below. I'd love to talk to you about what you think I got right, where I was wrong, who you want to see your favorite team take. And if you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that like button. It would mean the world to me. And if you're new to the channel, like football content, want some more off-season content, I have plenty of that on the way. Please consider hitting that subscribe button. But that's going to do it for the video, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed. My name's Tej, and I'm signing off.
I'm part of the last generation that remembers time of God.